Golden Blooded back with another video just for you, the college football fans. So if you are a college football fan, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. That's all we do here every single day. And don't forget to go ahead and check out our Patreon page. I call our Patreons the shot callers because they call the shots around here. Also, don't forget to check out our website, designed and created by Joey Foster. We now have 9 great writers, led by our 2 head writers, Michael Walker and Scotty B. the Baylor King. So we're about to check out of North Carolina here in just a minute. Had a great time. Awesome cookout yesterday. Always fun to get together with family members. Oh, and yesterday we went to the Science Center, which is a pretty fun place up here in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's basically a combination between a zoo and some science stuff. Like there was a tornado tunnel where you could go in and experience winds of up to 80 miles per hour, which is a really weak tornado, but it's still fun, and a lot of other science stuff. But there was this one guy that was just walking around out in the middle of nowhere, and I couldn't resist. I'm a big weather buff. One of my favorite movies of all time is The Other Guys. And whenever I saw this guy, I had to do it. I couldn't resist.
Hey, Captain, I'm a peacock. You gotta let me fly.
But I wanted to do this video on the way out because I saw this from one of my subscribers. He sent me a message. And then I looked into it, and it really made me raise my eyebrows. So some big-time rules changes are being presented so that college football will be, quote, safer. Now that there's a lot of lawsuits with head trauma and all that stuff, it's being taken a little more seriously. And it could change college football as we know it. Just the head trauma lawsuits themselves are threatening the existence of college football. So college football might be forced to make these changes because of those lawsuits. But there is some side motivation to these changes, and that's playoff expansion, because player safety was a major reason why the ACC voted against playoff expansion. The ACC does support these rule changes that would create fewer plays, meaning player safety. So the ACC would be more likely to agree to a playoff expansion if that really was a reason for them to vote no. By the way, rules can be overturned at any time if they don't meet the expected results. So let's say it's week 3, week 4, the NCAA, the conferences, and the teams are like, this isn't working. We need to go back to the old rules. They can do so, even in the middle of the season. So some of the things that they're looking at. Number 1, it's pretty simple. Fewer plays, shorter games. That's the whole basis for this. They want shorter games, less exposure to the game violence. And you know, college football is violent. It always has been. So now they're trying to somehow take that out of the game. I don't know how you do that. College football in nature is violent. The hits are hard. I mean, you do have penalties for targeting and all that stuff, but still, in general, I mean, it's just the nature of the game. And a lot of these rules are based off the NFL rules. Running the clock after first downs. That's one of the biggest rule differences between college football and the NFL. Well, they're proposing that in college football, the clock keeps running after first downs. Run the clock after incomplete passes. So you can't stop the clock if you throw an incomplete pass. That's a big deal right there. Clock starts when the kicker hits the ball instead of when the returner catches the ball. So that should shave off a good, 5-10 seconds right there. Clock starts when ready to play is signaled by the refs instead of when the ball is snapped. Now, this is after a change of possession. Also, they're going to look into declined penalties and see how much potential clock that costs them as far as having to stop, call the penalty, and then the other team declines. I don't know how they would figure that out, but they're going to try. Another interesting thing is CBS, ESPN, Fox, and NBC, all their executive producers will be involved in these meetings. And they're also wanting to talk about the termination of the extra point. So a lot of rule changes. And it's shaving a little bit of time here and shaving a little bit of time there. If you look at one of these rules, it's not that big a deal. But when you combine all these rules, it's going to shave a lot of time off of college football. And the reasoning behind this is player safety. The rationale is the less they expose the player to the violence, the less chances of these head trauma injuries or any of these other injuries, actually. So in theory, it actually does make sense. But how would it actually affect college football? Well, there would be a lot fewer plays, that's for sure. The game would be shortened. Total yards gained would go down. Total points per game would go down. As far as the excitement of the game, I'm really not sure how it would affect it. It could go either way. It could make it more exciting because teams are trying to go even faster, or it could be less exciting because there's already teams that try to shorten the game, and this would be even easier for them to shorten the game. The biggest thing I want to look at, though, was playoff expansion. I mean, this is really being pushed. It's actually the reason why Greg Sankey threatened that the SEC would create their own playoffs and national championship if playoff expansion wasn't done sooner rather than later. So this is just another way of putting pressure on playoff expansion. Look, I'm for playoff expansion, but if you're that desperate for it to where you're willing to change things and threaten to have your own playoffs and national championship, that makes me question your motivations. That comes off as having a bully mentality. If you're doing it for the good of the game, that's one thing. But if you're doing it because you just want to make more money, that's a completely different story. So I'm not really sure how I feel about this just yet. I just came across this the other day. Haven't really thought about it all that much. I just wanted to give you guys the facts and see what y'all thought about it. So y'all leave your comments and questions in the comments section and tell me what you think about these potential rule changes. And it could happen as soon as this year. Remember, rules can be changed every other year, or at least proposed. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be changed, but it can happen every other year. So even if it doesn't pass this year, 2 years from now, they could revisit and it gets passed then. But I guarantee the SEC wants these rules passed sooner rather than later. That way it puts more pressure on the ACC to vote yes for playoff expansion, because that was one of their biggest reasons. Player safety. And this would shorten the game, and the concern of, oh, this just adds more game to the season. Well, if you counter that by actually shortening the games, then maybe that doesn't even matter. So if these rules do in fact get passed, it will put pressure on the alliance to pass the playoff expansion, which is exactly what they're going after. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you on my next show.